All right, I wanted to do a quick review about some stuff that I think some folks were confused about in lab. So we're going to talk about blood typing for a few minutes. That's the ABO blood types and the Rh factor or the rhesus factor. So, for instance, let me give you a scenario. Let's say here you got into a really bad car accident, God forbid, but you got hurt. You're gonna live. But you're hurt pretty bad. You're losing a lot of blood. So you get on an ambulance and they're able to stabilize you and they rush you over to the hospital. When you get to the hospital, your doctor takes a look at you and then she says, look, you're going to be fine. You've lost a lot of blood. We just need to get you a blood transfusion. Luckily for you, somebody has donated some blood. So we can get that into you as soon as possible, but your doctor is she's smart, so she says, you know, I've heard of all of these people having issues with blood transfusions, so let's take a closer look at your blood and figure out, or not your blood, let's take a closer look at these people who have donated blood and see what kind of blood type they have. So she says, let's get our magnifying glass out, our cheesy magnifying glass, or your microscope or whatever, and take a closer look. And you see this. You see some erythrocytes, red blood cells, you see some white blood cells in here. But this is not necessarily illustrative. You can't tell the difference between the two by just looking at this level. And so she says, well, let's zoom in again and look at a molecular view, a much closer view of these red blood cells. And you see here, these red blood cells have lots of these proteins and different things on their surface. They have these different things on their surfaces, which are used for various cellular functions. But she also notices we have these interesting glycolipids here. You got this A glycolipid here, and you have this B glycolipid over here. And these are what makes your blood a particular type. So this A means that this is blood type A, this B means that this is blood type B, and these glycolipids, or you could also call them antigens, allow your body to recognize itself. These allow your body to just say, oh yeah, well, you know, I'm type A. I recognize that that's my blood. So we're pretty curious about these. So we decide to take an even closer look at this particular antigen. And if you zoom way in, you can see here on the side of your blood cell, yep, that says A. This is our A antigen. This is type A blood. But you also notice this guy over here. This is what we call an antibody. Now, this antibody is part of your immune system, and you'll notice it's holding this wanted sign that says wanted B. And that's because this antibody's sole purpose in life is to find that glycolipid tag that says B on it and mark that cell for destruction. So this antibody's entire purpose in its existence is to find and let the rest of your cell know, hey, or let the rest of your body know, hey, there's a B here. We should destroy this thing. And again, this might seem silly to you. Why would it be attacking blood that's trying to help? Well, your body doesn't know that the blood is trying to help. It's just trying to keep out any foreign invaders. And so pretty often, these things are used to destroy things like bacterial cells that get into parts of your body where they are not desired. But anyway, this is your A antigen here, and this is your antibody that is looking for and trying to mark that B antigen, anything with this B antigen, for destruction. So, you know, you've got your type A person over here, you've got your type B person over here, and here you have another donor, which is a type O person. And you'll notice this type O person doesn't have any antigens at all. It has neither A nor B. So then If we look closer at this type O person's blood and see if we can find any antigens on the edge, we don't see anything. There are no antigens, and this is not to suggest that there aren't those surface proteins that you see here, these transmembrane proteins. There's still going to be stuff on type O blood, just not these particular A or B antigens. You see no antigen though, no A or B, but you'll notice that the type O person has these antibodies looking for both type A and type B. So if you try to give type A or B to a person with type O blood, it's not going to work out. So we could actually, kind of like we tried to do in lab today, figure out if we have donor up here, this is the person giving the blood, and we have recipient down here, this is the person receiving the blood, we can use logic to figure out who is able to accept blood from who. So if you have a person trying to give AB blood to a person with AB blood, that's okay. We'll put a check mark there because that's fine. These both have A and B antigens. Now, if you have AB blood and you're trying to give it to somebody with type A blood, do we think that's going to work out? I don't believe that's going to work because the person with this A blood type has antibodies looking for this B. So this person with this type A is looking for this, kind of antigen, and all of these blood cells have this A and B antigens on them. So this is not going to work. That person's antibodies are going to attack any blood from this donor. All right, let's keep going down the list. If an AB person tries to give blood to a B, are they going to be able to do it? Well, no, because this person's blood has A antigens in it. It's looking to kill any cell with these antigens on it, and this AB person has it, so this is not going to work out. Now, if AB tries to give blood to an O, will that work? Well, no, because this O has antibodies looking for A's and B's, so this is definitely not going to work out. So, moving along, if A tries to give blood to an AB person, will this work? I think that it will, because this person has no A antigen, or no A antibodies, I should say, right? They've got A. They have B antibodies, but this A blood has no B antigen, so that will work. Now, if this A donor tries to give blood to this A recipient, will that work? Well, yeah. These blood types look like one another, so you can put a check mark here. If this A donor tries to give blood to this B recipient, will that work? Well, no. No, it will not, because this B recipient has anti-A antibodies. This B person's body is trying to kill anything with this A. And can this A donor give blood to this O person? Well, no. You have the same problems there. So, if you're a B donor, like I am, and you're trying to give blood to this AB recipient, is that going to work? Well, yeah, that will work, because this AB person has no antibodies against A's or B's, because it has both, right? So that will totally work out. Now, can this B person give blood to the A? Absolutely not. Remember, A has anti-B. A has antibodies trying to kill B, and B can definitely give blood to B. That's not a problem. These two blood types look the same. They both have A antibodies, but it's not a big deal. They're good to go. And can B give blood to O? Well, no, it cannot. O has anti-B antibodies. I'm saying anti a lot, but that's the terminology. Now, Can O give blood to AB? Sure. Remember, O has no antigens on it, right? O has no antigens. Can O give to A? Well, yes. According to that same logic, it's no problem. And there's no antigens on O, so A doesn't see anything. The person who has the A blood type, their antibodies can't find anything on O, so that's fine. And can O give to B? Well, sure, the same logic applies here. The same logic applies here because B doesn't have, or O, I should say, doesn't have any antigens, doesn't have little tags on it that can be found by B. And can O give blood to O? Well, sure. Why the heck not? There's nothing to be found on the surface of this blood that an antibody would attack. Now, again, there are still things that are found on the surface of the blood, but that's fine. The interesting things that I want you to notice here is this. Okay. AB can get blood from anyone. AB can get blood from anyone. And I also want you to notice this, which is that O can give blood to anyone. So AB is what we call the universal recipient, and O is what we call the universal donor. So the Rh factor in your blood, that's an important thing as well. So it's just another like antigen-antibody relationship where you have a blood cell that has a little, it either has a little antigen here for Rh factor or it doesn't. So you either have this thing or you don't. So if you're Rh negative, you should only get Rh negative blood. If you're Rh positive, you can get either positive or negative blood. So if you're Rh negative, you can develop an antibody that attacks these tags that people have on their Rh positive blood. So kind of like you saw in class, in pregnancy, this can be an issue. So let's imagine for a moment that my mom, is Rh negative and her child is Rh positive. So really there's no there's no blood-to-blood contact, and antibodies are only flowing one direction from mother to her child. This is not a big deal, except for, you know, she has child 1, and it's no problem. But then when she's having child 1, there's some blood-to-blood contact because there's some hemorrhaging involved with pregnancy. She is going to see, her blood is going to see that Rh positive child's blood. So before her first child, we're going to say that mom is, she's O negative. She's got this A and this B. These are her antibodies. They're out looking for type A and type B blood, and that's all good. But then her blood came into contact with that Rh positive child, and she developed this antibody. She picked up this antibody looking for this plus. And so she has her child, life is good, but then she gets pregnant again. She's still Rh positive, and her child, or I'm sorry, mom is still Rh negative, and her child is Rh positive, but mom has developed now these antibodies that go after Rh positive blood. And again, the antibodies are transferring from mother to child, but not in the opposite direction. And so what happens is, or what can happen, is the child can develop this really, really bad toxicity, or basically the mother can mess up the child really, really bad because she has these antibodies that are wanting to attack the child's Rh positive blood. Luckily, that ROGAM that you learned about in class. I didn't know that that's what it was called. But what that does is it basically temporarily blocks mom's antibodies and prevents it from attacking her unborn child. So that drug prevents mom's antibodies from basically messing up the child really, really bad. There's lots of symptoms associated with it, everything from permanent brain damage to death, depending on the severity. But this was developed a really long time ago, and so that ROGAM is an absolute. It's fantastic. So here's this giant chart with red blood cell compatibility for donors and recipients. And, you can certainly memorize this if you would like, but I think it's easier to just use a little bit of logic here. I think it's a lot easier to just understand these positives, these negatives, and these ABOs, because this is not something I would ever memorize. This is annoyingly big. It's too much information. So I think it's much easier to just understand kind of how those tags work, how those antibodies are out looking for anything that's not like them.